Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Patrick McKenna, who is the CEO of DMi Partners. Patrick, why don't you tell us about what DMi Partners does?
That's great. Thank you for having me here. And DMi Partners is a full-service digital marketing agency. We have about 100 people. We work with largely direct-to-consumer companies, helping them leverage the digital ecosystem to help grow their business through, incrementally driving revenue to their websites through different digital marketing channels. Our kind of real area of focus is on affiliate marketing and email marketing as our kind of two core areas of focus. But we are full service, so all digital marketing channels we engage for our clients.
Now, I know that you've been looking at the question of hybrid work, return to the office, working with your clients, seeing what they're doing, just seeing the general ecosystem within the marketing space, other spaces. What's your take on what is the situation currently and where it's going?
Yeah, I would say it's probably in a bit of a flux situation for most of our clients. We're in a pretty stable place at DMi, but some of our clients are have been in a remote situation since the beginning of the pandemic. Some of them are starting to come back to more full-time in the office. Some of them are doing more hybrid work. So it's definitely a mixed bag from what we're seeing with our clients. For us at DMi, we're doing very, very much a hybrid. So we have a lot of our team, which is fully remote. So they're not near our office. And so they're going to be remote. And for the folks who are near our office in Philadelphia, some folks come in every day. That's kind of the minority of people. And then the other folks split into two groups, one who come in occasionally, but not on a necessarily consistent basis. And then some folks who almost never come in. So we're pretty remote oriented as an organization because we have folks on every team who are not in our area. So even if everybody was coming in, we would have to be incorporating that remote workflow into the way we work. So it's pretty easy for us, and we'll continue with that structure. I assume forever, but that seems like a long time.
Sure. What have you found works effectively to integrate the people who are more remote, who are remote when other people are in the office? Because that seems to be an issue that many firms are facing difficulty with. They're saying, Google is saying, well, we'll return to the office. We're having difficulty with mentoring, collaboration on the job training. Same thing for, let's say, Salesforce, I think, especially for junior people. Meta's having some troubles with that. AT&T just announced that they're having a return to office. And what have you learned that clearly they haven't learned that helps you make sure that people who are working fully remotely are still able to contribute as much as people who are coming to the office?
Yeah, I guess the first thing I'd say is I'm never quite sure whether when a company makes a statement like that, whether they're actually, fully believe what they're saying or whether they're just trying to reduce some of their workforce by forcing people to work in an environment different from what they've been working. I do think that does happen from time to time with companies where it's an easier way for them to reduce their overall headcount and expense base. For us, it's interesting. Prior to the pandemic, we were split. Half of the folks who were in the organization were in the Philly area, and they were expected to be in the office 5 days a week. And the other folks were not in Philly, and they were never in the office. And so the change for us happened when basically for the folks who were in the Philadelphia area, them not having to be in the office every day. So that was the big shift for us. But there wasn't a big shift from how we do work because we always had folks on every team who were remote, as I mentioned. So we built up a pretty consistent way that we did work in a remote world. And so that enabled us to transition, I think, very seamlessly into a fully remote and hybrid world. For us, the key is that to really making that successful is, I think from a workflow standpoint, it's consistency and communication. And so those two things happen in tandem a lot of the time by making sure that we're building like a metronome and a pace to the way that we work. And we're doing consistent meetings, consistent check-ins, short team-wide meetings, longer team-wide meetings, individual one-on-one sessions. Maintaining that consistent communication can feel a little bit burdensome when you lay it out, but I think those checkpoints are really integral to us, continuing to understand how we're working, seeing the challenges when they pop up, addressing the challenges collaboratively with managers and teams working together to solve problems, and then making sure that, that we're kind of all moving in the same direction so that we don't get too far astray if there's any issues that pop up. So it's really, for us, that's like the key. I don't know beyond that, but I think for us it's really like that consistent communication, making sure that we have daily huddles every day. Each team has a daily huddle every morning. They get together, it's really quick. It's between 5 and 10 minutes. Everyone's running through the same kind of updates on their stuff every day. We have definitely weekly one-on-ones with each manager. I think almost every team has a separate weekly meeting where they're like going through things from a bigger picture, and then we do more monthly strategy sessions, quarterly higher level strategy sessions, semi-annual kind of look back, look forward, and then annual strategic planning. So like it's just like that consistency of like knowing how we're going to be communicating with each other on what interval, and having those regular periods where we're able to check in, I think is really integral to maintaining that. I think from a culture standpoint, because I think part of your question really is about the culture of the organization.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think culture is the same whether you're in person or outside. I think it's really about being authentic, right? It's about, not building a culture that's meant to look good on LinkedIn or in an article, but really feel authentic to the people that are in the organization. So that's what we really focus on. And sometimes we're good at talking about that stuff on LinkedIn or Instagram, and sometimes we're not. But if we're consistently living that purpose that we have as an organization, and articulating our core values to each other, holding ourselves accountable to those, shouting each other out when we're living them every day. If we're consistently doing that, whether we're talking about that publicly or not, we're building that culture. So I think that the ways we have that communication and that consistency ensure that we're doing that. I mean, it is harder, right? You have to be more intentional about how you communicate when you're not in person, right?
Sure.
Me placing a phone call to someone who doesn't work directly for me has a certain level of weight that's beyond what I intend than if I were walking by someone in an office, right? Walking by someone in the office, I check in, that's a normal interaction. I place a phone call to someone who maybe he reports 2 or 3 levels away from me, that feels like, the CEO is calling me. That's scary. And so we have to be intentional about how we do different like casual check-ins and make sure that we're not creating barriers or burdens or anxiety as a part of that workflow. So
that's excellent. To go back to what you were saying at the beginning, so I was helped 24 companies by now figure out their transition to hybrid work, and I was talking to a company that has pretty flexible hybrid model. It's a pretty sizable retail company, D2C, and the CHRO was telling me that she talked to another CHRO who told her that they're announcing a return to office in part in order to cut headcount. So it's definitely the case that actually people are disclosing internally, if not publicly, to other, in confidence to other CHROs and leaders, that this is indeed what they're doing in order to reduce headcount and not have to pay severance packages. So definitely right on that as being at least one factor, might be a major factor, who knows. Now, going to your culture, what you're describing it simply, but it's really difficult. I'm working with a professional service firm of about just over 100 people right now, and they're having a lot of struggle with specifically their managers, knowing how to manage people who are working remotely. Because their managers are more used to managing people who are in the office. And I know you've had some people who are fully remote, but let's say the people who are in the Philly office who are coming in 5 days a week, that's a big struggle. So the managers, it seems to me from what I've observed in helping a number of companies, they tend to be the biggest obstacle. I mean, it's sometimes the C-suite is the biggest obstacle, but then they don't bring me in, so I don't observe it. But when they do bring me in, and when they're open to having some flexibility, it tends to be not. I mean, the employees love it, a large majority of them, but the managers have some trouble with it. So what have you done to help develop your managers and give them the tools and the techniques and the mindset that they need to be able to manage employees while the employees are working remotely, whether part-time and hybrid employees or full-time?
Yeah, I mean, I think continuing to develop quality managers as an organization is kind of one of the keys to us actually scaling our firm, right? So as a services firm, we're as good as all of the folks who are on our team, right? Because we're providing services to clients. So we need to continue to develop ourselves individually and collectively as a team. And so one of the ways that we really focus is on that group of managers. I think, it's important to like understand, I think one other thing about DMi is I think a lot of companies create a path for growth within an organization that involves moving into a management role in order for them to proceed to the next level. And I don't think that that is smart. Because I think because you can do a job well, doesn't mean that you can manage well. And if you can't manage well, you shouldn't be penalized for that. And so there are folks who are great managers who are also great at doing individual, work. And that's great. And they produce, they move down a path of developing into management roles and progress as managers in the organization. But if folks don't want that for their career, or if their skills don't necessarily align, or their skills are so valuable that we don't want to detract from those, we create paths for growth that aren't management related. So I think that's important because we're not forcing folks into a management role just to grow. So people are self-selecting into that role, and their skills are being identified as people who can grow in that direction. So that one at the outset. I think the other thing is like really going back to the beginning is really consistent communication is really the key to management. So it's talking and listening and doing that regularly on defined intervals in a defined format that provide flexibility, that enable the manager to provide the feedback they need to address the challenges or to support the individual on their team, and to provide the team member the ability to say, hey, I think I'm doing this really well. What do you think? Or I'm having trouble with this. How can I get better at it? And so that is really the key. But I still haven't answered your specific question about how do we develop them. We do have our own training system that we've developed internally to help train managers as they kind of develop into that role. We have trainings that we do internally for managers on regular, consistent basis to kind of continue to help them to develop or to refresh things that we've done in the past. We also use third-party coaches and trainers to help us kind of think about different elements of managing from a slightly different perspective, sharing successes that they've either kind of researched through kind of an academic perspective, or they've implemented or seen implement at other different organizations. So we have a pretty robust internal training program that we have developed and continue to invest in. And then we also use outside third parties to kind of supplement that and augment that and provide like a little bit of a view from a different vantage point. So.
Excellent. Well, this is really helpful. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with our audience. Are there any last words with which you wish to leave the audience on the topics we've discussed that you haven't yet shared?
No, I mean, I think it's, the world we're living in today where people have the flexibility to work, the way that works the best for them, and is really wonderful. And I think, I have very little concerns around team productivity at this point. Certainly there's always individuals on our team that can be more productive, and there's days when anyone, including myself, could be more productive. But I think productivity really isn't my concern. It's really kind of continue to invest in the ways that we're developing each other and growing together and helping our clients succeed.
Excellent. This has been really helpful, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you as well. And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed, wherever you check us out, and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.